Welcome to another episode of People of Data, where we get to highlight the wonderful people of data. These are our data leaders from various industries, geographies, and disciplines. Discover how companies are using data, their achievements, and the challenges they face. Today on the show, we're thrilled to have Zhong, who's a data leader with over 15 years of experience working in the fields of data engineering, analytics, machine learning, and AI. Throughout his extensive experience leading cross-disciplinary data organizations, including 10 years at Amazon, data engineering is an evergreen bedrock of his scope to power downstream functions across business analytics, data science, operations research, and artificial intelligence. Currently, Yuan is the VP and Global Head of Data and AI at Rappi. Yuan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Darush.
Of course, very excited to have you here. Are you ready to get into it?
Let's get to it.
Awesome. So what does Rappi do? How do you guys make money? And what role does data play in helping Rappi do what it wants to?
For the listeners that might not be familiar with Rappi, which is a Latin American-based on-demand delivery super app. So Rappi was founded in 2015 in Colombia in Latin America, and right now operates in 9 different countries in that region, serving 300,000 more merchants and more than 30 million users in the area. So we are an on-demand quick commerce delivery app and a super app. That means that we offer kind of a ordering and delivering for customers across restaurants, groceries, pharmacies, and many other categories, all in one app. We even have our own sort of a fintech and kind of banking capabilities and travel booking capabilities. And it's a very widely sort of a popular app for residents living in the region. And we make money essentially by serving 4 very distinct kind of group of audiences all in this app. We're serving the end users who need quick and high quality delivery from a wide assortment. We charge them service fees and delivery fees. And also we make money through serving and take rates from merchants and restaurants and sort of grocery shops who listed in our platform. We also make money through sort of monetization of advertisement placement and co-marketing kind of a budget that for the merchants joining our platform. And the other sort of side of the audience that we also serve, which we don't make money from, but we also serve, is the hundreds of thousands of delivery agents living in the area. This is like for Latam, it's kind of a project and a social undertaking transforming generation of sort of workers and sort of gig workers that are actually riding bicycles and scooters and motorcycles and driving cars, delivering, hustling in the cities. In that, Rappi as a platform also serves their best interest, helping them make a living and raise a family. And to the good part of, data and data in sort of Rappi, I would say it's not an exaggeration to say data is in everything we do here at Rappi, making decisions, monitoring performance, and sort of optimizing on the efficiency of the business, from just the metricizing on the key KPIs so that we can keep improving, to running high volume of A/B testing experimentation to figure out the right sort of assortment, the right treatment, the right pricing strategies, to the right algorithms that we roll out for, dispatch and bundling, to pricing, and to all the back-end sort of optimization that we have here. And all the way up to, data feeding into features that fed into data science and machine learning and artificial intelligence models to allow for better recommendation systems and personalization of the site experience. So data is in everything we do as a company. A lot of the executives working at Rappi come from other companies that have gone through a journey of data-driven decision-making, and we're embracing this culture like oxygen.
That's incredible. I've been a personal consumer of Rappi and been blown away with this concept of, sub 10-minute deliveries, with like a bigger and bigger library every time I go check it out. So big fan. And it's the culture like at Rappi, it's such an interesting platform. And, as you mentioned, data plays a big part in it. What's the overall macro culture play like? And what is the data culture being on the data team? Just, as sort of cross-functional as data teams typically are, is some of the culture which you are distilling into the data group?
And that's another awesome question. I probably can start first by saying the Rappi overall as a company, but the culture is still very distinctively that of a startup culture, founder-led startup. We were founded in 2015, and till now we still haven't reached our first decade, right? Our existence. lot of things are putting together with a lot of entrepreneurial kind of spirit and a lot of hassle in place with the sense of urgency and eagerness and willingness to make mistakes and then to commit fast. And with that, the company culture is one such that is, my opinion, very low ceremony and very high pace. And then also a very sort of blunt kind of openness to each other, providing feedback, oftentimes very heated ones, but behind the scene, people also hug it out as brothers and sisters, really sharing a common vision there. And that's very refreshing in many ways. And especially if the people working at Rappi came from another sort of a bigger, more established company, and seeing the drastic difference of a very flat organization and very high speed and very low level of patience for
Yeah.
for slowness and for bureaucracy. And that's the overall kind of a company culture that we operate in. And when it comes to data teams, and it's very hard to say right now there's any other more distinct culture outside of the broader corporate culture. But when it comes to data being cross-functional and multidisciplinary, we do have a very strong culture of openness, embracing open source kind of tools, and also embracing vendor solutions. And then we do not really have an obsession to say, this solution has to be built in-house by my team, otherwise I'm not going to use it. We really are indexing on how we can move faster, how we can really scale better. And also sometimes we were even over-indexing on just trying to get things to work and worry about how we'll clean up a bit later. Right? That's a double-edged sword, but overall there isn't kind of a preference, very deliberate preference of just trying to move faster and then figure out how we scale as we grow. And then another kind of a culture, subculture within the data teams is the attitude and embracing of the cross-disciplinary nature of data, where, data engineers and analysts and then machine learning engineers and operation researchers and economists, they do have very different skill sets and they do learn from each other. There isn't that much of a kind of snobbishness of certain type of data skills is more higher end than the others. If anything, it's really about, let me learn from you, show me how you're doing this. And then people generally just a very low ceremony. Again, I keep mentioning this word, and then very open to sort of share and coach from each other.
That's so incredible. I love the openness to it. And talking about, being a startup, what is the company footprint of like? How big is the company? How big is the data team today? What's the breakup?
Not counting on, like, for example, the temp workers and the contractors and then the delivery kind of agents and couriers that we have, the corporate employees, we're still is in the region of, 4,000 to 6,000 people. It's, ups and downs based on the, cycle of the business. That's across 9 different countries. And the data teams that are, being centralized as we speak right now. And then also we say for the people who are explicitly wearing a data type of job title, we're talking in the region of 300 plus people. And then we do have another range of people who are not wearing a data job title, but a lot of things they do are either empowered by data or they're heavy users of data as well.
Yeah. Very interesting. We typically, again, this is just having done a bunch of these episodes and my experience, we typically see that about technology as a marker is typically about 20% of an organization, and data is about 20% of technology. Yeah. So we look about 4% at about 5,000 people. You would expect that about 200 people to be roughly in data. So given that it's 300 plus is...
From that standpoint, we're definitely, from a ratio standpoint, we're over-indexing overall among the tech employees, and we do consider data people as part of the tech employees. But then also we don't want to take it to say, because we probably are not, provisioned right for tech overall. But for data, there is some very concentrated investment growing that army and being very deliberate about running A/B testing and switchback testing and AA testing to inform a lot of decisions. We learn a lot from Amazon and Meta from that standpoint, and also Expedia and then sort of a DoorDash instant.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And, over-indexing on data, given that, as you mentioned, at a cultural perspective, it is this sort of bedrock on top of which you're building. You mentioned centralization is becoming important again of data. How do you, at an org of a few hundred people and, a business expanding in multiple sort of countries, how do you look at centralization versus decentralization, and what's the longer term approach on this?
It's very thoughtful. And then when it comes to central versus decentralization, the consideration is less about geographical decentralization or not, because the because we operate in 9 different countries, and there are even like people working outside of Latam from a remote standpoint. People working virtually together is not something, it's not new. Even before the pandemic, it is already the practice for Rappi. The centralization is more talking about pulling people, data experts into a central organization under the tech and data kind of a leadership. So we have consistent standard, evaluate, coach, develop, drive synergies of those data people rather than having them in getting overly embedded into each vertical business and operational lines. It's not that, as I mentioned, there is a second ring of professionals who are very data proficient. They're just not wearing a data title. They could be an operations manager, product manager, or finance professional who does data all the time. Right? Those people are still, those experts, they're still embedded with business. But when it comes to now, you're running central BI tooling, BI data ops, and data infrastructure. You're building like search engine and building catalog related AI capabilities. We centralize them under a few functional leaders within the tech org. We've seen like companies go centralized, decentralized, and then going hybrid all the time. And for Rappi, this total centralization is preceded by heavy decentralization when each vertical were given the mission to go really fast, grow and scale their business and hire data professionals. But once we reach a certain point, we realize, okay, the standards are not necessarily consistent. And the tech stack they use and data standards and data catalogs, they're all over the place. So, and we started to see synergies to centralize. And I'm not surprised at a certain stage later, we realize, okay, we can centralize this much, but then we're going to send back certain centralized resources now back to be embedded with the business team, no longer separate by data engineers versus analysts versus scientists. They could now become part of the vertical data team that reports to the head of the business for that vertical. I can totally see that happen, right? We're essentially talking about how Meta organizes data. They're all rolled up to the engineering kind of a VP in many cases versus Amazon, where the data folks are most commonly rolled up under the general manager of that business, right? And Rappi right now went from the previous Amazon approach to the Meta approach. But as we grow bigger, it's anybody's guess where we're going. But there will always be, I think, a component of the data team being centralized because that there's just a lot more efficiency for those professionals working together.
Makes a ton of sense. What does the data footprint look like? What staff do you use? What are some of the vendors currently being used today?
Yeah, so when we talk, I think when you say data, is more around data engineering and data infrastructure, right? But from that standpoint, it was not deliberately trying to go with different vendors, and we did think about centralizing that under a few vendors. But then we're in the process of consolidating the data teams that they do come with different choices. But think of it this way: from the raw data from systems and from logs, we need to go through connectors. And right now, when we use connectors, the main connector kind of a vendor we use is Fivetran. And then when it comes to compute, it's a combination of we have Google's compute and Amazon's compute, but everything is Snowflake. And then in terms of our workflow orchestration, Airflow, and then we've actually gone through Airflow and built our own instances of Airflow. And then we work with, the managed version of Airflow, Astronomer very closely right now, co-developing the capabilities. When it comes to sort of visualization and business intelligence dashboarding, we explore different tools. Right now, we're heavily with Power BI. When it comes to sort of a clickstream and then sort of a site journey, funnel analytics, Amplitude is the tool that we're using predominantly. And then there are some open source implementation, for some niche use cases. And when it comes to storage, it's S3. And when it comes to sort of A/B testing experimentation, we were centering around, the tool called Split and, Static, those two tools. And then, even for the single purpose, there sometimes it's more than one tool that is used across Rappi. But we try not to, over the last year, we'll try not to further proliferate those tools, but instead we're consolidating and we're standardizing, governing the access and the usage and metering as well.
And especially you think about multiple different geographies and preferences of data people over there, what we see is sort of companies around the size you are today. It's not Snowflake or Databricks. It's very often both, right? So, so this makes a lot of sense. A thing which was said in here, which is, very typically a usual suspect in these stacks, is something like dbt for like data modeling. Is this something which is used or,
it was used by engineering and development teams there. But then overall, we didn't further proliferate or didn't further branch out to a major implementation. Not yet, not yet. And we're trying to form a point of view over there as well. Because a lot of the existing vendors, they are also approaching us to say, yeah, we can cross-sell, right? And then you're using us already with such a big contract, and when we come to renewal time, yeah, here is another deal. And it's a very, very common kind of conversation we're having, and we're open-minded.
Yeah, exciting. People of Data is brought to you by 5x. It's no surprise that the data space is one of the most fragmented industries with over 500 vendors in 30 plus categories. The analogy we use is data vendors are selling car parts. Imagine walking into a Honda and instead of selling you a Civic, they sell you an engine and you have to build your own car. That's exactly what's happening in the data world today. 5x is an all-in-one data platform that's incredibly easy to use. We make it easy to consolidate your data from your different systems, clean it, structure it, model it, and make it available through dashboards, reporting, and AI. Whether you're building a data platform from scratch, filling in missing pieces, or need expert data services, 5x has you covered. Imagine a world where any team can become a data and AI team in just a few clicks. If you're interested in making sure you don't get left behind in this new world of data and AI, get a demo at 5x.co. What is one thing which you are particularly proud of the data team for achieving, something which could be, impacting the business, or something which Rappi wants to do?
So actually, there's too many things that we're proud of almost every day, at different dimensions. But maybe today I'm going to highlight the area that sounds the least sexy, but actually for a company that had thrive on operational excellence in a cutthroat, low margin business, that is actually very important, which is really to enable the rest of the company to have ready and very low latency, fine granularity access to their performance data. We do data for recommendation systems, for image recognition, all the way to a lot of Gen AI, LLM applications and fraud detection. But the thing that the business can see in the field every day, the least sexy one actually is the one that we get recognized and get we'll get a lot of satisfaction from as well. So just to give you the concept of, before the centralization, the company doesn't have or didn't have kind of a central data dictionary and catalog to define metrics. The same metrics are calculated so many different ways. And even for the same kind of a KPI, there are multiple or dozens of different kind of tables and versions of the same tables and very dated queries. And then it's a matter of who happens to have a query, who happens to be closer to the leader, and then they might be pulling the data. So it went from that state of Wild West. We consolidate the source of truth to build them into sort of a medallion, kind of a brown, silver, and gold kind of a structure, and layer on top the governance of essentially the query banks and definitions and data dictionaries. And then on top, you further engineer so that the refresh cadence, the latency, right, of the operation report, we went from sometimes the data is late for 1 or 2 days to now we can refresh some of our most important data on the hourly and sub-hour basis for the key KPI dashboard. And those are like transformational for the business to be able to immediately pick up signals where things are not working as intended. Right? Because we're a startup, operations, we're not that perfect in many ways, but we need to be able to know and cut down on detection, the time to detection. And those are the things that we have managed to enable over time, over the sort of last couple of quarters, to just make a night and day difference in that one. In parallel, all the other science work are also benefiting from just the plainer data features for them to model from and a much lower cost of just feature processing to begin with.
Love it. It's sticking to the basics and, doing an incredibly good job at decision support and being able to support, the business with on-time, reliable, trustworthy data. One area, what's been one challenge with, the growth and the scale and, the sort of dealing with multiple countries, which you're solving, and something which is sort of keeping you up at night and something which you're working towards?
Again, similar to the previous one, there are many. And then, just to carry on the same spirit of looking at those boring topics, but actually does make a difference, right? The things that keep our data infrastructure side of the team really kind of on our edge and stay very humbled to everything we do is the fact that we're working with a plane that is going at super high speed operate in a super high speed, well, we really need to also change the engine on top and the data engine per se. And also another aspect of that is that we inherited, or the company has evolved band-aid after band-aid, and then groups after groups and acquisition after acquisition. We've inherited a very messy kind of a recurring and scheduled and kind of ongoing data workflow that are not very well tagged. The lineage of the data, you have the lineage of the jobs, but also the tagging of the job. What is that job, that particular tag or that particular data feed? What exactly is that consumed for? You know, they're loaded into certain data assets, right?
Yeah.
But you do not really know for that data asset, which team actually should be responsible for telling us whether they need it or not, whether the logic is still up to date, or when their alarm is triggered. We didn't really have the proper lineage or tagging to
Yeah.
even for us to know who to talk to. And we're in this process of just running deprecation campaign, running lineage tagging, and running additional governance policies so that any new workflow being introduced to the pipeline do have the tags, and we can really trace it back, and then we can really baseline them. And
Yeah.
without those things, it becomes even harder for us to really know the true impact when there's an outage. We know how many DAGs got impacted, but we really don't know how many real business. We didn't know how many real business decisions might have been brought by it. So this is an ongoing kind of a work that we are actively working on right now to clean up, to have really a good baseline going forward, to say now whichever vendor have a better solution, try to beat this baseline that we've got, rather than right now, any vendor solution, just they the pitch is all very attractive in many ways, but then there are really fundamental house cleaning that has to be done by somebody, and it has to be done by the team that is closest to the business.
Makes a ton of sense. Juan, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your wisdom today.
Well, thank you for asking those thoughtful questions, and thank you for organizing this event.